Welcome to the Yissilmissil Productions channel. My name is Steven Yissil, and today we are here for part 11 of our deep dive into the Bermuda Triangle. So I hope you're all doing well. I see Jason's in the chat already. He says it's just started storming here. We got clouds right now. I don't think anything's dropped down yet, thankfully. But, yeah, that's how it goes today. I wanted to get some music going in the background. Yeah, I really liked how I did Saturday's show. If you haven't checked that out yet, it's the Chicago film industry deep dive series, and I put music behind me while I'm speaking, and it really flowed well. So I'm really gonna try to replicate that today if I can. But yeah, I hope you're all doing well. It's been a really busy week here. Alright, if you give me a few minutes, I will have some music here. Alright, you know what? Don't even have to wait that long. Hold on. But yeah, today we have chapter 8 to get through. It's really up to the end of this book. We got a little over 15 pages, and then we got chapter 9. But we're like just near the end of this book. I do believe chapter 9 is that's the last chapter. So what I'm thinking is this week, today's show will do the rest of chapter 8, and then next week we will do the remainder chapter 9, and then we will be moving on to more literature, more research centric books. I do have a few lined up that I've picked out. I have not pulled the trigger on them yet, but I'm very close to doing so. Alright, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna have this music playing underneath while I'm reading. You can find this music over on White Bat Audio. But I figure it'll make things a little more interesting while we get through all of our material here. So we're not just going to look at this photo on the screen. In fact, we'll go back to what we were showing last week, but I still think this is pretty cool to look at. This was the submersible that was used to I mean, it crawled along the floor of the area of the Bermuda Triangle. It found roads on the bottom of the water. Okay, so if the music is too loud, let me know, because I can't really tell with the levels while I'm live here. So just give me a shout out if it's too much, and I'll bring it back a bit. But we're continuing off of page 155. Specifically, we are starting on this paragraph here. Alright, let's begin. Extraordinary discoveries have been made in the study of certain medieval maps, notably by Professor Charles Hapgood, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, it's titled, who has spent many years re-examining these maps in the light of their containing information about the Earth presumably unknown at the time the maps were made. We hear this quite often, too, in other instances with maps. Some of these maps have been copied and recopied through the centuries from vanished originals formerly kept in the Great Library of Ancient Alexandria, and demonstrate startlingly accurate knowledge of lands as yet undiscovered, according to history as we have learned it. When the original and even the copies were made, such as the existence of the North and South America and Antarctica thousands of years before Columbus. The Piri-Reis map, a section of a larger world map of ancient times, found in 1929 amid the clutter of the former harem of the ousted Sultan of Turkey, clearly shows the true coast of Antarctica as it would be without the covering ice, as well as the topography of the interior, also without the covering ice. An examination of Antarctic land cores taken in the vicinity of the Ross Sea indicate that Antarctica has been covered by ice for 6,000 years as a minimum. This would mean that the original map was made considerably before recorded history, during the time era attributed to Atlantis and its reputed world culture. Another map, the King James World Chart of 1502, also a copy of much earlier maps, shows the Sahara Desert to be a fertile land with large lakes, rivers, and cities, which, at a remote period, it was once. The Buashi World Map of 1737 shows Antarctica as copied from an ancient Greek map, and the very existence of Antarctica was only suspected by the modern world until it was officially discovered in 1820 as two large islands separated by an inland sea. If the ice could be removed from Antarctica, this is precisely how the land would look, although this was not known until expeditions made this discovery in the geophysical year of 1958. Other maps show some of the glaciers of the last ice age still existing in parts of Europe, Britain, and Ireland, and in another, the Bering Strait is shown not as a strait, but as a land isthmus, as it once was. And that word is spelled ISTHMUS. The salient features of these recopied maps of antiquity are the facts that their exact coordinates and knowledge of longitude not developed in the modern world until the end of the 18th century, indicate a knowledge of spherical trigonometry and the use of geodetic instruments of excellent precision, and the possibility that they were originally plotted during a period approximately 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, many centuries before our own recorded history. Curious bits of correct astronomical information exist in the records of ancient races, although, as far as we know, they had no telescopes, giant or otherwise, to obtain such data. These include the awareness of the 2 moons of Mars and their distance from the planet, the 7 satellites of Saturn, the 4 moons of Jupiter, and the phases of Venus called the Horns in Babylonian records. Even aspects of the far stars were discovered. The Scorpion constellation is so called because it has a tail, a comet, within the constellation, but this can only be seen with a powerful telescope. On the other side of the ocean, the Maya of Central America, perhaps with a shared knowledge of a previous culture, called this constellation the Scorpion as well. The Maya of all ancient peoples computed the solar year to the closest figure reached by any calendar, including our own, as 365.2420 days, with the exact figure being 365.2422 days. As scientific knowledge apparently receded from its ancient apogee, much of this astronomical information became transformed into legends, as, for example, that of the god Uranus, the planet, who ate or eclipsed his own children, the moons, and then disgorged the end of the eclipse, them. Although such a phenomena could no longer be seen because of the disappearance of viewing devices, the astronomical information was preserved through semi-religious myths. Perhaps the most unusual of all the indications of a previously advanced science still extant and available for our examination is the Great Pyramid of Egypt. For thousands of years, it has been reputed to be a tomb, although a tradition preserved by the Copts, the C-O-P-T-S, that's how it's spelled, an Egyptian minority directly descended from the ancient Egyptians, indicated that it was a compilation of the knowledge of the, quote, reign of the gods, and that it would prove to be a book in stone compiled by Surid, one of the kings before the flood, and it would be deciphered in the future by those sufficiently advanced to read it. Just give me one moment here. Alright, we are back. I was just making sure that the audio is okay, and it does sound okay to me. Alright, that should be good. Alright, continuing on. This hidden information aspect of the Great Pyramid was noted during the Napoleonic invasion of Egypt when French engineers, using the Great Pyramid as a triangulation point, found that the sides were exactly aligned to the cardinal points with the longitudinal, this is a different word, longitudinal meridian passing through the apex of the pyramid, and diagonal lines through the apex of the pyramid prolonged northward would exactly bisect the Nile Delta. I think this is worth rereading once more, because this falls into the ley lines, which I'm very fascinated by. This hidden information aspect of the Great Pyramid was noted during the Napoleonic invasion of Egypt, when French engineers using the Great Pyramid as a triangulation point found that the sides were exactly aligned to the cardinal points, with the longitudinal meridian passing through the apex of the pyramid, and diagonal lines through the apex of the pyramid prolonged northward would exactly bisect the Nile Delta. So we have some very precise construction here and arithmetic that people of less inquisitive minds like to dismiss, using the term that was created after President Kennedy was assassinated. Conspiracy theorists. When you have French engineers doing this during the Napoleonic invasion, I don't know. We have ample evidence and facts here that these megalithic structures were aligned to a world grid. It's very clear at this point. But the question is, did these grids just happen to be here on their own? Are they a natural part of the land that we live on? Is it a natural part that runs underneath us? Or was it previously constructed from a previous civilization? Magnetic lines, kind of like, I guess you would compare it to bullet trains. And then you have the stations, such as the giant, the megaliths. I'm getting somewhere because my voice just got killed there. The giant megaliths be like they're operating like train stations. Just think of it that way. For these grids that run underneath, and then all you would have to have is some sort of special compass that would pick up this man-made grid underneath us, so that you know you're on the right path, on the right road. Doesn't necessarily mean that your vehicle has to be on the land either. Alright, continuing on. A line extended due north through the meeting point of the base diagonals would miss the North Pole by only 4 miles. Always considering that the North Pole could have changed its position in the centuries since the Great Pyramid was built. Today's system of metric measurement is based on the meter. 1/10,000,000th of the meridian, a measurement developed by the French shortly before their invasion of Egypt. The pyramidal cubit of 50 inches, employed by the ancient Egyptians, and which predated the French meter by thousands of years, is almost equal to the meter in length, but is actually more exact in that it is based on the length of the polar axis instead of the length of any meridian, which can change somewhat according to the contours of the Earth. And again, what are we speaking about here? Contours of the Earth. Talking about mountains and valleys? Because that's about it with contours. That's the yin and yang. Certain measurements taken of the Great Pyramid in terms of the Egyptian cubit indicate an astonishing knowledge of the Earth and the Earth's place in the solar system, a knowledge forgotten and not rediscovered until the modern era. The information is expressed in mathematics, The perimeter of the pyramid is equivalent to the count of days in the year, 365.24. I think that's very important. Doubling the perimeter gives the equivalent of 1 minute of 1 degree at the equator. The distance from the base to the apex of the slant of the side is 1/600th of a degree of latitude. The height multiplied by 10 to the power of 9 gives the approximate distance from the Earth to the Sun. The perimeter divided by twice the height of the pyramid gives the value of pi, 3.1416, considerably more exact than the figure arrived at by ancient Greek mathematicians, 3.1428. So that's a variable of 0.0012. The weight of the pyramid multiplied by 10 to the 15th power gives the approximate weight of the Earth. The Earth's polar axis changes in space from day to day, bringing a new constellation of the zodiac behind the sun every 2,200 years, and reaches its original position once in 25,827 years. A figure which appears in the pyramidal calculations, 25,826.6, when the cross diagonals of the base are added together. The measurements of the king's chamber within the Great Pyramid give the exact dimensions of the two basic Pythagorean triangles, 2.5.3 and 3.4.5. Although it was built several thousand years before Pythagoras. And these are only a few of the pyramid's coincidental measurements. One wonders why such a huge and complicated structure should be raised to impart such information, unless, following a series of global catastrophes, survivors still possessed of technological facilities wished to pass on knowledge to the future in a way that could not be destroyed, even if all records and all languages then existing were lost. In this connection, one is reminded of the suggestion that when explorers from space reach Earth, or space probes from Earth reach other civilized planets, mathematics and mathematical equations would be an effective means of establishing primary communication, as the scientific and technological background for such a trip would be necessarily based on mathematics. The pyramid's message, not from the future but from our own past, may in future reveal considerably more elements of information as we become more expert in recognizing them. It has sometimes been suggested by researchers of the Great Pyramid, as well as the Coptic tradition, that the Great Pyramid is a record of a body of knowledge which was later dispersed or lost, except that part of it was preserved in legends. Such vestiges of a prior worldwide civilization or civilizations that we think we could recognize seem to indicate that while some of their developments were similar to ours, they may have developed in other fields with which we are as yet largely unfamiliar. I would say with harmonics, because harmonics is very low-key in terms of public knowledge. Not enough people are questioning why all of our church bells, ancient bells from buildings were all destroyed and melted down for the sake of war. Oh, we needed metal for the wars. No, you don't just destroy culture to accomplish that. There's mines. There's other countries that have this material available. You don't have to melt down your own culture. Tremendous stone structures throughout the world are classified as unattributed, meaning nobody really knows who built them. And they generally resemble each other in construction as well as alignment to planets, the sun and moon and their orbits, to the constellations and other fixed stars, and to other forces as well, possibly the magnetic fields and currents of the Earth. These enigmatical prehistoric structures include the pyramids of Teotihuacan, or Teotihuacan in Mexico, and other older cities of Yucatan, the pre-Inca ruins of the Peruvian Andes, and the lines of the Nazca Valley. The massive ruins of Tiahuanaco at an altitude of 13,500 feet, the giant stone structures of the British Isles, especially Stonehenge, and Avebury, Avebury, and the great standing stones of Brittany, some of which continue out under the ocean. The prehistoric ruins on the islands of the Mediterranean, in the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. The Cyclopean remains of the Carolines, Marquesas, and other islands in the Pacific, the monolithic structures under the Caribbean, the prehistoric stonework of Niebla in Spain, and that's spelled Niebla, and unattributed works of North Africa, including Egypt. The alignment of the great mounds of the United States, which there are many of those. Maybe that'll be something to look at on this deep dive series. The way the great mountains of the United States are all lined up. And the archaic pyramids of China. And one part they left out is the Rock Gate in Homestead, Florida, or as it's known more popularly, Coral Castle. That's probably the most modern of all of those listed here. That was made by one man, by the way. Until the first decade of the present century, all dwellings in China before they were built were oriented by a necromancer in order to take advantage of the fallacious paths or unseen currents running across and through the earth. It will be remembered that the first compasses, as we know them, came from China. A perspective commentator on the landscape architecture of China, Dr. Ernst Borschmann, thought the arrangement of temples, pagodas, and pavilions aligned to a center from which they radiated resembled a magnetic field. The procedure of following force lines in the earth, in Chinese Feng Shui, or wind water, possibly a holdover from an advanced ancient science, has now been dropped as being superstitious and feudalistic, although another form of superstition, acupuncture, which itself may be another scientifically valid relic disguised through the century as magic, has been elevated to a position of respectability by the present regime in China. If the force of magnetism and reverse magnetism had been understood and developed in very ancient times to a point where gravity, in itself a form of magnetism, could be channeled like other natural forces, an explanation might be at hand for some of the technologically impossible prehistoric constructions many of which seem to have literally been thrown up to the tops of mountains and perched on the edges of precipices, as if these monolithic stones had flown there. It is intriguing to reflect that some residue of ancient electromagnetic techniques may still be protecting the Egyptian pyramids, while the scientists of today are endeavoring to reveal their secrets, in this case sealed chambers within the pyramids. For some time, there has been a project underway to penetrate the inner structure of the Chephren Pyramid at Giza, and that's spelled Chephren, by recording penetration by cosmic rays of the stone mass. This project has been under the direction of Dr. Amir Gohed, spelled AMR, and then GOHED, of the University of Ain Shams, Cairo, using, among other equipment, a new IBM 1130 computer. Although the tests were expertly applied, the recordings day after day have given completely different recorded patterns in the same areas. According to Dr. Gohed, quote, "It defies all the known laws of science and electronics," end quote, and is, quote, "scientifically impossible," end quote. Well, it still is happening. That's the best answer he can come up with. A London Times article reported that, quote, "The hopes of a great discovery were now found to be a mass of meaningless symbols," end quote. And Dr. Gohed, in assessing the up-to-now failure of the project, said, quote, "There is some influence that defies the laws of science at work in the pyramid," end quote. I wonder if he found it out and he was just told not to say anything. Because why would you be so brief about that? Rather than being a defiance of the laws of science, what may be concerned here, could it simply be other laws or use or modification of other laws that we do not understand even today? Stresses and pulls that represent the hidden forces of the Earth, the planets, the sun, the moon, and the stars. In his book, The View Over Atlantis, John Mitchell refers to the unity of prehistoric culture and observes that, quote, "The Earth is strewn with works of prehistoric engineering connected with the use of polar magnetism." Man, oh man. Note-taking time. I see you there beyond the box. Thanks for saying hi. He suggests that we live, quote, "within the ruins of an ancient structure whose vast size has hitherto rendered it invisible," end quote, linking together the great stone remains of prehistory still standing on the plains, mountains, deserts, in the jungles, and under the seas of the world. In his opinion, quote, "The philosophers of the time considered that the earth was a living creature and its body, like that of every other creature, had a nervous system within and relating to its magnetic field. The nerve centers of the earth corresponding on the human body to the acupuncture points of Chinese medicine were guarded and sanctified by sacred buildings, themselves laid out as microcosms of the cosmic order," end quote. Indications that there may have been one or more world civilizations in the remote past that disappeared as a result of natural or self-induced catastrophes, which happened considerably prior to our own recorded cultural beginnings in the 4th millennium BC, have largely survived as fragments of advanced knowledge, retold or recopied through the centuries. Buildings or monuments that may have come down from such a period, imposing as they are difficult or impossible to date. In addition, the extent of the time slot which we have previously reserved for the appearance and redevelopment of civilized man scarcely permits the time needed for the building of this largely hypothetical culture. However, the recent discoveries by Dr. Louis Leakey and Mary Leakey in Oldovy Gorge, I know there's a way to say this. I'm not doing it right. Olduvai Gorge. It's spelled Olduvai. In Tanzania, and those of Richard Leakey in Kenya indicate that primitive man may go back as far as 2 million years, and findings in the Vallonnet caves in France have dated primitive tools as 1 million years old. Well, again, I think the carbon dating is not correct. I think the carbon dating template was, well, I'm sure it had to have started in like the 1890s, because that's around the time when they started taking these, these different animal bones and making a collage and calling them dinosaurs. The study of the skulls of Cro-Magnon man, generally considered to have existed 30,000 to 35,000 years before our era, indicates that his skull capacity with its inferred brain size was at least equal to, and sometimes superior to, our own. While the marvelous cave paintings of animals in France and Spain, often located in caves which have fallen beneath ground level, have been accepted as part of the world's heritage of art, other less-known artistic records may eventually cause a basic reevaluation of the age of civilized man. Pictures scratched on flat pieces of rock dated by layers of covering earth at Lussales Chateau, France, Lussacles, show such surprising drawings of the period usually associated with cavemen as to be almost incredible. At a time thousands of years before the dawn of civilization as we know it, unexpectedly modern-appearing people are shown wearing robes, boots, belts, coats, and hats, and men are shown with clipped beards and mustaches. Other sophisticated wall paintings deep within caves in South Africa of approximately the same period depict white travelers wearing elaborate but unidentifiable garments, engaged in what may have been a prehistoric safari or voyage of exploration. Concepts of prehistoric evolution postulate that one type of man follows another on the ascending evolutionary scale, with the best fitted and most highly developed types replacing the more primitive. And again, I want to just say here, like, this past civilization was trading with each other easily. They weren't just always exploring. No, they had the whole damn place mapped out. I'm tired of all of this narrative saying that, oh, they were exploring here, or they were just discovering this over here. No, these people were well established, and they were visiting other people they knew. Give me a break here. Prehistoric safari. Get out of here! Concepts of prehistoric evolution postulate that one type of man follows another on the ascending evolutionary scale, with the best fitted and most highly developed types replacing the more primitive. Yeah, I don't think so. Just look at today's culture. We're in a fucking down spiral. While this is generally true, with the advanced Cro-Magnon type replacing the brutish Neanderthal man, It was still possible during Earth's long history for both these types, and others as well, to coexist, a situation we find existing even today in a world population which includes atomic scientists and Australian Aborigines. If an advanced civilization did not exist before those we know of, it seems reasonable to expect that some indication would survive, furnishing a clear proof, if anything is ever completely clear in archaeological research, that such a technically developed culture existed not just several, but many thousands of years ago. Yeah, and it probably lasted such as long or longer. Like I said, they all knew each other. They were visiting each other. They weren't out exploring. This whole place was mapped out a long time ago, and with the advanced buildings that were left behind that we just kind of adopted, like, you can't just go and tell me that these people were just out exploring. It's not like that. I think we had one major natural catastrophe that had something to do with passing comets that wreaked havoc on everything. But then later on in the 1800s, we started having man-made destructions. And it could have easily been something like using harmonics, softening the ground, and that's why you have what looks like mudslides covering buildings halfway underground. Hey, Jay. Good to see you too, Jay. I just went on a little rip here. Yeah, I mean, this book, I'm just getting a little exhausted of these narratives that whenever they come across these cultures that were previously unknown, and they're like millions of years, because they're saying here there's like 2 million year old civilization that was found in the caves. They're still calling them cavemen. They're still referring to these people like they're all Christopher Columbus. Just, I don't get it. They were all interconnected. There's a world grid. There's an energy grid. It's almost like it was a bullet train grid, but for magnetic levitation. And even beyond that, it was used for the compasses. China was one, we just learned here, China was one of the first places that invented the compass. It was because they were using it to follow the ley lines and all of that. Aborigines. Get out of here with this talk. I'm tired of this stuff. We had very intelligent people living on this planet well before us. It's our ancestors. We're the result of all of these major megalithic structures that are here. And I'm not going to let some book here or any online article tell me that, like, oh, everyone was just discovering everyone. No, everyone got excommunicated. And then that's when all the rediscovering started happening. But these people weren't going out just, oh, hey. They were going and visiting each other. That's my stance on this. Let's continue. Let's finish the rest of this chapter. We got 6, 7, 8 pages left. Alright, rant over. We'll continue reading. If an advanced civilization did exist before those we know of, it seems reasonable to expect that some indication would survive, furnishing a clear proof, if there is ever completely clear in archaeological research, if anything is clear like that. So I already read this. However, just as would be the case with our own civilization, if it were to be destroyed, most of the buildings, machines, and artifacts would decay, rust, scatter, and become completely unrecognizable before several thousand years had gone by. Yes, that's a very good point. Some indications might conceivably survive if they were buried within the shifting earth under the permafrost of the North or the Antarctic ice, or hidden on the bottom of the sea. The development of the carbon-14, potassium, argon, uranium, thorium, thermoluminescence, dendrochronology, tree ring dating, and other dating processes has shaken some of our long-held theories about the first dates of civilization. Yeah, and carbon-14 is not accurate. It's not accurate at all. We even have examples of like those chisels that were found in the middle of rocks that were dated to be millions of years old. And it looked like a hammer you could get over at the Home Depot. I'm sure someone knows what I'm talking about. That it's a very famous artifact. Alright, continuing on. An iron mine in Guinea, Lesotho was worked by unknown miners 43,000 years ago. Stone tools found in Iran have been given a date of 100,000 years. You also want to know why the Zionists are in perpetual war in the Middle East? Not only are they trying to destroy all of this architecture and history of past civilizations, but they're also trying to land grab the entire region. But that's for another show. I'll talk about that sometime else. Large-scale copper mining operations in northern Michigan apparently predated the Indians by thousands of years. And there is actually proof that popped up not too long ago that yes, that white European settlers were here well before Indians and well before Columbus. So checkmate. I'm just saying checkmate because like all of this information is riddled with inaccuracies, and I thought something was up, and that just validates that. Yeah, something was up. In Wadis, Utah, a new tunnel dug into a coal mine broke into an unexpected series of existing tunnels of unknown age. The coal found in these tunnels was so weathered that it was useless for burning. There were no Indian legends concerning such mines, nor did Indians use tunnel techniques for mining. As man has explored deeper within the earth, certain tooled artifacts have been discovered contained within coal, stone, or other strata, implying an age so great that it can only be roughly calculated. And that's where the carbon-14 dating falls away. You cannot have modern, or quote, modern technology and tools embedded in what they're calling millions of years old technology, unless it actually is millions of years old and carbon-14 dating is accurate. But it just says here that it deviates after a certain period, because we don't know how old this place is. Could be very young. Could be only a few thousand years. Also, the passage of time could have been manipulated as well. Which is also probably why the past 5 years have felt a lot faster than it should have been. All of these factors and variables I take into account here. Alright, continuing on. As man has explored deeper within the earth, certain tooled artifacts have been discovered contained within coal, stone, and other strata, implying an age so great that it can only be roughly calculated. A shoe print in Fisher Canyon, Nevada, embedded within a coal seam, has been estimated as being 15 million years old. A shoe print, 15 million years old. I don't think this place has been around here for this long. I'm sorry. That's why I say the carbon-14 dating is inaccurate. A print of a ribbed sole of a shoe or sandal found in sandstone under rock in the Gobi Desert is thought to have been made several million years ago. In fact, it says under the Gobi Desert. Still, another fossilized footprint of a sandal uncovered in the vicinity of Delta, Utah, contained trilobites embedded in it, meaning that they came after the sandal print, or they were attached to it. Trilobites were Paleozoic marine animals that have been extinct, it is to be believed, for at least 200 million years. Are you starting to understand the immensity of these claims here? First they said, we only think it goes back about 8,000 years of our known history. And then saying, well, there's this evidence of caves that have possibly 1 million year old evidence of humans being here and living intelligently, and they just brush it off. They call them cavemen. Then we have these footprints that are found in Nevada that date back to 15 million years that are embedded in the coal. And then you got even more. We got another footprint that has these trilobites in it that are supposed to have existed 200 million years ago. So that's why I call BS on the carbon-14 dating. It just doesn't make any sense. And where else are you hearing about this? Why is this not being talked about? It's the forced unintelligentsia of modern society. This information's being kept out of all these social media platforms. I mean, even you think about who runs all of these things, who controls the media, and who are you not allowed to criticize, and there you could find your answers. Anyways, let's continue on here. 200 million year old sandal footprint with trilobites on it. But they admit carbon-14 dating is inaccurate. So at least they say that much. Let's continue here. A fossilized human skeleton excavated from a mine in Italy in 1959 was surrounded by strata whose age was calculated in millions of years. A piece of quartz found in California revealed that there was an iron nail inside of it, completely encompassed, like the prehistoric insects preserved in amber in the North Sea. A piece of feldspar from the Abbey Mine in Treasure City, Nevada in 1865 was found to contain a 2-inch metal screw, which had oxidized but left its form and the shape of its threads within the feldspar. You can't make this up. There's some fringe channels that'll go and say, oh, no, this is evidence of time travel. I don't think so. I think we had a very advanced human civilization living here for quite some time, many, many years ago. And something wiped most of us out. a giant hum, like a boom. Could be low pitch, could be bassy, but that's what I think happened. And with that harmonic resonance, you can make dry packed dirt that hasn't seen water in decades turn into liquefied sand just by sound being projected at it. And that's where you can get the sinking of all of these buildings and megalithic structures and whatnot. Just giant sound weapons. Like that 2003 movie of The Hulk, where they have these giant sound weapons on top of the tanks and they're trying to catch the Hulk with it. Imagine that on a much larger scale, like the size of a cathedral. It's a giant satellite-looking dish thing. That's what I think's happening with that. All right, we're moving on. We're keeping on moving here. So this 2-inch metal screw, it oxidized, but left its form and shape of its threads within this feldspar in Treasure City, Nevada in 1865. The stone itself was calculated as being millions of years old. In the last century, at the village of Schondorf near Vaclavbruck, Austria, a small iron cube-like object, less than a centimeter in length and breadth, was discovered inside a block of coal which had been split open. They found a tiny cube. Tiny metal cube. An incised line forms a groove around the cube which has rounded edges, as if machine tooled. There is, of course, no explanation as to what it was or how it got inside the block of coal millions of years ago. It sounds like it's a gear to something. Some little gear. And those are probably mass produced by our ancestors. And that was just, I could see it being maybe one that was imperfect, that was tossed aside. Or, I don't know. Okay, before we continue reading on, I will also mention this, that all of these coal deposits and quartz deposits, and you could possibly even say marble and granite, all of these could have formed almost instantaneously, depending on how sound manipulation was used on these materials, which would explain all of these megalithic structures like Göbekli Tepe. There's a few other places I'm not really recalling right now, but there's one in or around Egypt where they have scoop marks that they were working on this, taking an obelisk out of the granite bed there. But what if they had a tool that was kind of like, it would be similar to what I was saying about Coral Castle with Ed Leeds Golnish. You're holding two ends of something, and in the middle is your device that you're using. But that device can either have harmonic resonance or something else. I'm going to say the harmonic resonance. Let's say you're holding it in like a bent shape, like a half circle. And then you're going in and you're scooping out this solid rock with this device. And it's cutting through it like butter. And then you can take what you cut out and it's still solid. All you did was cut around or through this piece that you're trying to get out and remove. And that's what's happening with most of these megalithic structures. Yeah, Jay. Beyond the Box is Brenda. Yeah. Yeah, this is a good show tonight. I'm really into it here. Oh, man. I'm going to take a short break. So, just bear with me. I'm going to try to finish this chapter. Hopefully I can. Alright, I'll be right back, everyone. Alright, I'm back. Oh, man. Alright, we're jumping right back in. At the time of the conquest of Peru, there is a record that a nail was found within a rock by a Spanish-directed Indian crew with a Peruvian mine, an incident which caused consternation not only because of its apparent age, but because iron was unknown in America before the arrival of the Spaniards. Yeah, to the current civilization at that time, I want to say that there was one civilization, at least, that came before us. It's our ancestors. But they had very similar technology that we are rediscovering again today. And screws and nails and gears, all of this stuff is being found in the sediment that's supposed to be a very, very old age. But if harmonic resonance changed the structure of all of this material, it could change it in an instant. And then there goes your carbon-14 dating right out the window. You got a hammer inside of the middle of a rock that's supposed to be hundreds of feet underground, whatever. Usually the simplest explanation is the correct one, and I think we're on the correct path here. A mastodon found at Blue Lick Springs in Kentucky was excavated at a depth of 12 feet. But as digging continued, a cut and set stone pavement was found 3 feet deeper under where the mastodon had been lying. This is only one instance of finds of ancient stonework within the United States. So old that its dating by surrounding or super-adjacent objects, as in this case of the mastodon, has not been accepted. So it's dating, like these people are just straight up refusing to accept that these two things coexist together. And let's say that there was liquefaction through harmonic resonance of our earth, our dirt. The hard dirt turned liquid by a sound weapon, meant to take out all of civilization. And it covers 3 feet of the previously known roads. And then you have the ice ages. And then you have the mastodons dying out after that. That's why it would be at the levels that they are. They're saying, what was it? 12, at a depth of 12 feet in Blue Lick Springs, Kentucky, the mastodon was found. But then 3 feet below that, under where the mastodon was, there was a road, a cut and set stone pavement. You can't make this stuff up. And then you have these scientists just straight up reject, oh, no. This goes against all of my previous research. It'll invalidate all of it. It's just going to give me a headache. I'm just not going to accept this part. That's what these people are doing. These and other cases are so difficult to explain in terms of history that many are inclined to disbelieve them entirely, while others credit them to visitors from other worlds who left their footprints on our world at eras so remote that what is now solid rock were malleable and viscous areas. Hey, I think they're trying to say what I was saying. The solid rock was turned liquid. But they're not saying how. And from our other research, from looking at this book too, like, we're finding that harmonic frequencies can manipulate our geographical materials here. Okay. Getting back to the book now. These and other cases are so difficult to explain in terms of history that many are inclined to disbelieve them entirely, while others credit them to visitors from other worlds who left their footprints on our world at eras so remote that what is now solid rock were malleable and viscous areas. The possibility exists, however, that these footprints and simple objects were made by men of extremely ancient races living on the earth, and that the discoveries in mines mean that this civilization was so far back in time that only what has been hidden within the earth or preserved within other materials has so far been found and even not identified. Did that make sense? Oh, that rainstorm's hitting now. Let's hope I don't get cut out. Alright, I'll reread this. The possibility exists, however, that these footprints and simple objects were made by men of extremely ancient races living on the earth, and that the discoveries in mines mean that this civilization was so far back in time that only what has been hidden within the earth or preserved within other materials has so far been found. And even then, not identified. Well, I think that's all that would be left then. Besides these giant, like cathedrals, for instance. You have the cathedrals that were built over thousands of years. There's some that are still being added onto to this day. The only way that this like if the goal was to wipe out the previous civilization, whoever was like running that whole thing, whoever had the sound weapon, they wanted to make sure it would all go away, and they weren't thinking of like, oh, it's going to get preserved under the liquefied stuff. Their main concern was just to cut off civilization, just wipe it out. Just make sure it was not operating anymore. Start from zero, so to speak. One wonders how many small clues have been destroyed through the centuries, with only a few enigmas remaining to furnish any evidence of pre-dawn civilization other than legends. And you know, there's evidence that the pyramids of Giza had plating on it. Like there was a gold top, but also there was like limestone or some other stone that was on the outside of the pyramids. It made it shine like super bright white. And again, that's something else that's not frequently talked about. And then you have the Ancient Aliens series on the History Channel, which I think is disinformation at this point. There's a whole series debunking Ancient Aliens, the TV show. They take these known facts and then just attribute this to like ancient astronauts. No, they're not from outside. They're from right here. Wow, thank you, Jay. Jay's saying I'm loving this series, and this is top 10 channel for me. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I think this is very important information to get out, and whether people watch this later, like even years from now, I plan to have all of this out on the internet for a very long time. And so, I mean, I want this to be accessible and so that people can learn, you know? and then the retention of the information too. So if you have to rewatch some of this stuff, by all means, go ahead. I don't know if we'll reread this book. I mean, we got a lot of other books to tackle on this subject. But that's why I'm taking my time reading through this, even if I'm reading a little slower at times. It's just so that we could absorb what's being presented here to us. Because, I mean, we're at a point in time where a lot of this information is just glossed over. And we have social media that's updating with single sentences and pictures of memes. I mean, that's where our society is now. It's not about going through reading entire books page by page. But I'm keeping it alive here so that all of you can carry it forward. All right, let's continue. Legends and carved pictorial representations of extinct but recognizable animals may be another indication of the antiquity of human culture. Yeah, I'd say so. An animal closely resembling the toxodon is depicted on a pottery found in Tiahuanaco. What the heck is a toxodon? I gotta look this up. Oh, it's exactly what I figured it was. Alright, we'll show it up on here in a moment. Just give me a second here. Toxodon. So that was found, this guy, something that resembled him was found on pottery found in Tiahuanaco. The 2.5 mile high city in the Andes of Bolivia. The toxodon, a prehistoric animal somewhat like the hippopotamus, had previously been considered to be extinct long before the development of civilized man, and in any case, his habitat was not adapted to a barren 13,500 foot high plateau such as Tiahuanaco, nor would the Tiahuanaco area have been a likely spot for the site of a great culture. And there are indications, such as cornfield terraces above the present snow line, and the surrounding mountains, and a deep lake containing oceanic fauna, that the entire area may have been thousands of feet lower when Tiahuanaco was built, perhaps at sea level and on the coast. By the way, I'm feeling the thunder from outside. This Midwest storm rolling through here. Like formed up in Wisconsin and now it's sweeping through the Chicago area here. But we're still on. We're still all good. Still running strong here. On the Marcahuasi Plateau near Canco, Peru. So Marcahuasi is spelled Marcahuasi. In Canco, Peru, there are tremendous rock carvings. In some cases, whole cliffs are modified by carving. And you know what? I think the most recent version of this would be Stone Mountain. The memorial to the Civil War. And just before we continue on here, since I know some of you are not going to know what I'm talking about, you ready for this? Yeah, it's in Georgia. Exactly. Right where I thought. Alright, let's go into Adobe stock here. This is a modern, very, I don't know, I want to say it's crude. No disrespect to any of this, but it's not like what our past. They wanted to recreate what our past could do, because look at how tiny it is, even though it's on this giant mountain formation. Which also, if there was liquefaction of things, this piece of rock could have been living quarters for some at a previous time. Like, we have no idea. But you see how it's not that far into the mountain here. It's just on the facade. Let me know if you could hear that thunder just coming in here. So this is a modern day representation of tremendous rock carvings on sides of cliffs. But you see the book here, this is saying like the entire side of the mountain, not just this little tiny thing. Rock carvings in Kenko, Peru, they have tremendous rock carvings. In some cases, whole cliffs are modified by carving. Oh man, what was that other one? There's a whole cliff that's being modified right now into an Indian head. The guy, he's pointing and he's on his horse. Is it Crazy Horse? It has to be. And that thing's taking forever to build too. And that's just with a couple people. Yeah. So they're modifying this whole natural formation or rock formation. But it's taken them forever. And I don't know if they'll ever get it done. See, on the other side of this, I think the cliff just drops off into a valley. But it's looked the same for the past 20, 30 years. Like, I have not seen any significant progress on this. There's supposed to be a horse here, too, at some point. But eventually it's supposed to look like this. When it'll get to that point, who knows? Alright, let's jump back into the book. By the way, if you're wondering what the slideshow is here, this is the Illuminat, which was used to look at more of these roads that were on the ocean bed in the Bermuda Triangle. Alright, continuing on. These pre-Inca carvings on the side of whole cliffs, although weathered by countless ages, can be identified as lions, horses, camels, and elephants, some of which are supposed to have lived in South America during the time of civilized man. Also in Peru, llamas drawn on very ancient pre-Inca pottery found in the ruins of a coastal city near Pisco are shown with 5 toes, as they once had many thousands of years ago, instead of the cloven hoof they later developed. I wonder if it's just a separate species entirely that just went extinct. What appear to be dinosaurs have been discovered in petroglyphs incised on rock formations in both North and South America, but since ordinary lizards, Gila monsters, and iguanas, for example, resemble their remote dinosaur ancestors, again, on this channel, we're under the assumption that dinosaurs were pieced together from other unidentified animals that have gone extinct. And they're being presented as entire animals. Because they've only found like a head of a T-Rex over here, and then they find the rest of the bones over here. Some of these bones have been described as chicken bones, which I really think they flipped that narrative around and tried owning it by saying, oh no, actually dinosaurs were prehistoric chickens. Like, it makes no sense. And those who say it does, I mean, show me your sources. Where are you pulling your information from? Is it, if it's from some tabloid website, then it's not as accurate as this. Alright, we had a slight drop in the internet. But I was just saying that the tabloids aren't as accurate as having booked sources. Alright, let's continue on here. I really hope that we're still broadcasting. Let me just double check here. Yeah, we're good. Okay. There's a severe thunderstorm going on right now as we're live. So that's... my internet could drop, but let's hope it doesn't. Continuing on. What appear to be dinosaurs have been discovered in petroglyphs incised on rock formation. Okay, let's reread this. What appear to be dinosaurs have been discovered in petroglyphs incised on rock formations in both North and South America. But since ordinary lizards, Gila monsters, and iguanas, for example, resemble their remote dinosaur ancestors, it is difficult to determine whether these examples represent prehistoric monsters or ordinary lizards. This may be the case with an Indian or pre-Indian pictograph depicting a great lizard scratched on a rock formation on Big Sandy River, Oregon. Oh. Really now? I kind of want to see that. Let's look this up. Lizard pictograph. I knew it. They're not gonna show it. But that's Adobe stock. Hold on, let's see other sources. Rock art. Oh no. Alright, show me the rock art. Aha. There we go. This may be the case with an Indian or pre-Indian pictograph depicting a great lizard scratched on a rock formation on Big Sandy River, Oregon. The picture, however, is in excellent likeness of a stegosaur. So this isn't the exact one. This is in the Columbia River drainage area. Oh my goodness. Man, I've also been watching a little too much of my other shows here. I've been noticing I'm actually speaking a little more similar to some other shows I watch. My brain's just getting saturated with other live streamers. It's all good. I'm opening these photos so we can see them all large. And these are all what, courtesy of the Bradshaw Foundation. Not to be confused with JBL. Oh man, this just keeps going on and on. I mean, I guess we could open them all. Yeah, because once I show them on the screen, then it is in the show archives for good, then. And we could always refer back to it if we need to. So you're able to see the smaller versions of these right now, but we're going to look at each of these blown up. Just to get an idea here. Because I personally have never looked at these. Although I'm aware that there's petroglyphs like this all over the place. Oh, and there's some people here. On this one. This looks like elk. Jeez, this is just... There's so many here. There's some in Washington, but we're looking for... This is the Oregon one here. We'll get back to reading from the book shortly. I just want to get this all up here for reference before we move forward. That's a good one, showing the size of the hand compared to the drawing. This one's interesting. So where's the stegosaur? Really, if you think about it, dinosaurs are just a made-up explanation for what is extinct that has come before us. Like, we don't even know what they sound like. They have all these new audio clips coming out saying this is what T-Rex really sounded like. And they made it sound all whooping. So not like the Steven Spielberg film from Hollywood. Oh boy, and there's all these from Idaho. Okay, so we're not going to go into too many of these. So these, I believe, these are from Washington at first. Let's see. Or no, California. I swear that one was a repeat. From here. Yeah. Or maybe not. Oh, it looks like just a different day. I'm saving that for later. Look at that. Are these the sun and the moon? You know, they gave celestial objects faces in a lot of this ancient art, so I wouldn't be surprised. But this looks like a whale. Just with the way the mouth and the front of the head is going. Very interesting. Maybe I'll make a slideshow like this to show it a later deep dive to run on the side just like this while I read. But for now, we're just looking at them straight through. Not sure what that is. Okay, and again, those are all from Washington. Yeah. Very cool, Jay. Yeah, my stomach's rumbling. I need to grab something to eat after this stream. See, like, what's this here? Some people will say it's a leaf, imprint of the leaf. What if this was an antenna, though? And then we got something like this thing, whatever that says going on. And there's also things that have been faded away from a lot of these photographs, from these carvings. This almost looks like a sky constellation. Man. See, the only thing I don't like about this stuff is that modern us go in here and put these ugly plaques on these things. That looks like a person. A hand with 3 fingers. Looks like they're inside something. See, this just looks like an elk or an antler, something to me. Alright. We're gonna get back to reading very shortly. Actually. Yeah. Because we got Grand Canyon to cover in this chapter too, which is the next paragraph. But all we can do is speculate on most of these. We don't know what their meanings were. Just the patterns. Man. I'd like to know what this was. Got people here. Oh, look at this. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? This really looks like these look like transmission towers to me, with people operating them. Almost like radio. The little dots going from sphere to sphere, and then you have a smaller subset of the same thing. That's pretty incredible. There's your lost technology. And then what would you do? Okay, so this is either a very abstract representation of their telecommunications of the old world, the past civilization that was liquefied, or this is their levitation technology. And we're just speculating here, because we don't know for sure. But look at this. Look at these tiny guys trying to fight off these giants. It almost looks like there's a plane here. But I'm not going to go too far with that. Could be a bird. Look, a giant with a little guy here. And then all these guys. Oh, there's even another one over here. Almost like there was a battle fought over here, and this is just them representing what it was. Wow. Again, these smaller people here. And these larger people. Enough of them. There's a bird. Oh, yeah. All right. That's pretty wild. Oh, this might be a representation of a comet in the sky, which also could have... That's what they had the... Either dragons really existed, or dragons are a representation of what everyone saw in the sky, which were these celestial objects flying past, which also could have caused the destruction of the Earth at one point, before the man-made destruction happened. Holy moly. But that's what that looks like to me. This is some object moving in the sky. You see the trails happening here. This almost looks like a bolt with a cross on it. But you also see there's a second face object exactly like this. There's also a third one here with eyes here. And the owls would be representative of our view of the sky. Because if you go, I think if you go to the equator or something, that's what you would see. Everything would be twisting like this, which creates those two eye-like things. So if you do a time lapse of the sky near the equator, it goes like that. It just, two rotations are happening in the sky if you go to a certain spot and do time lapse. Man, this is going a little longer than I anticipated. It's all good though. This is good material here. This also looks like some other winged being. I'm trying to find what this book was talking about. Giant hands. Not sure what's going on with that. See, we're missing a lot of this. The referential stuff for this. Again, what's in the hands of this being here? This looks like another people versus giants. Oh, look at that. The firmament. I think that's something. And you have these flying beings here. Not sure what this is, but we have walking beings over here. Oh, look at that. Or could this be living quarters that were also what would you call it? Harnessing energy. And then that goes into all of these ancient buildings that used to have this intricate work on the tops of them. But then it's showing a person with this same type of thing on over it. Yeah, I'm not sure what that even means. I might have to pick up the book on this stuff of the people that actually researched all this, because they'll have more knowledge if they've studied these things their whole life. These types of drawings and carvings, we'll get a better understanding of it from them. Yeah, like what's going on here? You see? So we went off the trail a little bit in this book. But this was referenced. This area was referenced, at least. Alright, I'm going to continue reading. I'll leave these up, and I'll cycle through as I read here. The Doheny expedition of 1924 found petroglyphs of extreme age in the Havasupai Canyon near the Grand Canyon. One stone pictured showed men attacking a mammoth, an unexpected petroglyph to be found in America, where man has usually been considered, geologically speaking, a fairly recent arrival. No. Like I said, just the other day, we got the information that there were European settlers here before the Indians and before Columbus. And I'm sure a Google search can bring that up because that's fairly recent information. Who knows if it's going to be up a few years from now, though. Among other pictographs examined, there was a reasonably accurate portrayal of a tyrannosaur standing upright, partly supporting himself on his tail, exactly as later museum reproductions have shown him. Again, we're talking about extinct animals that we really have no record of. And I think some of these were made up, including some of these dinosaurs, if not all of them. Other petroglyphs along the Amazon and its tributaries show what seem to be other prehistoric animals, especially the stegosaur. Near the village of Acambaro, Mexico, or Acambaro, Acambaro, during the excavation of a site in 1945, clay statuettes were unearthed, which have been the cause of an archaeological uproar throughout the years. They consist of models of rhinoceroses, camels, horses, giant monkeys, as well as dinosaurs of the Mesozoic era. See, I think these animals were they were uncategorized for the longest time. And eventually they just called them dinosaurs. Without any supporting evidence here. Like, look how big this is being represented, and then look how tiny these people are. It's like, imagine like a hippo the size of a 4-story building. Whew. So, this 1945 Acambaro, Mexico site in 1945. It says the find was further discredited since the discoverer, Waldemar Julsrud, Julsrud, offering to pay only for whole statuettes found, inadvertently encouraged reproductions to be made by the local Indians. Carbon-14 tests on the figurines, however, indicate that they are from 3,000 to 6,500 years old. One of the figures so closely resembles a dinosaur called the Brachiosaur that, if it were not for the geological eras in between, one would believe that the artist had actually seen such an animal. Again, I'm talking about these... Oh no. Oh no. Are we live still? So there might be some buffering going on. It might be because I'm displaying these pictures. I don't know. Like, what's this? I really hope we're still live. Are we still live? Hey, Jason. Oh, yeah, we're getting spicy up here tonight. I swear, there are some issues going on with the stream. But yeah, so they're saying these statuettes made by the local Indians, the carbon-14 dating brought it from 3,000 to 6,500 years old. The fact that early man drew or modeled animals that resembled dinosaurs is, of course, no proof that he ever saw them, although he could have seen their bones. The Dragon of St. George and the Dragon of China, as well as the dragon-like Sarush, portrayed among real animals along the walls of Babylon, were scarcely physical realities. Nevertheless, certain details suggest that early man may have appeared much sooner than is commonly believed, and that he dealt with some animals supposed to be extinct at his point in time. Yeah, what is this? What the heck is this? You see that face? What is this? Alright. I think you should see what's on the top of this guy. Look at that. How many tabs did I open here? Alright. Nevertheless, certain details suggest that early man may have appeared much sooner than is commonly believed, and that he dealt with some animals supposed to be extinct at his point in time. Yes. Some of these survivors would be located in time in the later epochs of the Tertiary era. Tertiary era. Tertiary. However, since some of the pictographs seem to portray reptiles of the Mesozoic era, long before the advent of man, one might suggest an intriguing explanation. If highly civilized man existed on Earth in an epoch before ours, his scientific curiosity would have led him to the discovery of the former presence of the Jurassic dinosaurs, as has been the case with us. With the disappearance of this former civilization, this knowledge might have been preserved through legends of dragons and pictographs. Again, as in the case of our own civilization, one must remember that little more than 100 years ago, traditionalists explained the presence of enormous fossils in the earth by claiming that God had made the fossils at the same time he created Earth. Andrew Thomas, Thomas, writing of historic anachronisms in his book We Are Not the First. There's another book. We have a lot of options to where to go from here. But we need to stay on topic with the... This is all Bermuda Triangle, by the way, because we're talking about the whole area of the Bermuda Triangle. It has what seems to be ancient civilization, especially all of this evidence of an Atlantis type of civilization being there, under the water, mind you, as if it was not submerged at one point in time. Andrew Thomas's book, We Are Not the First, tells of an excavated skull of an Auroch, an ancient wild ox, and that's spelled Auroch, now in the Paleontological Museum in Moscow. So this ancient wild ox skull is in Moscow. The skull, several 100,000 years old, is pierced on the frontal part by a small hole evidently caused by a round projectile. The lack of radial split lines, the speed and the heat of the projectile, as well as its shape, suggest a bullet. The supposed bullet was not fired after the Auroch's death, since an investigation showed that the wound had healed sometime after it was inflicted. There is another such example in London, the Museum of Natural History, where there is on display a human skull found in a cave in Zambia. Dude, are we having a hard time with the stream? Because I keep getting error messages here. I will quickly show these and then we'll cut. Okay, we're done with the pictures there. Okay, hopefully I don't keep getting these error messages. All of you will see it in the re-upload. Don't worry about it. Okay, so getting back to another example in London at the Museum of Natural History, where there is on display a human skull found in a cave in Zambia, as dated as 40,000 years old, with a comparable hole on the left side, also without radial cracks. The possibilities implied by these prehistoric shootings, if such they are intriguing. These discoveries, isolated and interpretive though they may be, point to the probability that civilized man has existed on Earth much longer than was previously assumed, without even considering the possibility of civilization being brought to Earth from outer space, as has been frequently suggested. Yeah, and I think it's really overplayed at this point. There would be time and space in the history of our own planet for one or several cultures to have developed to the point of annihilating themselves through warfare, disturbance of the environment, or of being destroyed by other forces which they may have unconsciously triggered. Our own culture, if we assume a starting point of 4000 BC, has progressed from primitive agriculture and herding to nuclear fission in only 6,000 years. Considering the age of mankind, there has been ample time for other cultures to have arrived at a level roughly corresponding to ours. A re-examination of some of the ancient records that have come down to us might give some indication of mankind having previously attained our present aptitude for destruction. While there are hints of great blastings of the earth's surface in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah, the Greek myths, and many of the legends of the Indians of North and South America, it is in the ancient records of India, copied and recopied from prehistoric antiquity, that we find described in considerable detail the use and effect of what closely resembles atomic explosions in warfare. Or the use of sound weapons. Unexpected references to such recent developments of our technological civilization are present in many of the ancient books of India, which, unlike so many records of our Western world, escaped burning and destruction. These references deal almost as if they were written today, instead of thousands of years ago. With such matters as the relativity of time and space, cosmic rays, the laws of gravity, radiation, and kinetic nature of energy, and the atomic theory. The Vaisesika school of science philosophers of ancient India developed and preserved the theory that atoms were in incessant motion. They subdivided the measure of time into a series of incredible fractions of seconds, the most infinitesimal being considered as the period taken by an atom to traverse its own unit of space. Surprisingly, modern-sounding references abound in the Mahabharata, a gigantic compendium of over 200,000 verses dealing with the creation of the cosmos, religion, prayers, customs, history, and legends about the gods and heroes of ancient India. It is supposed to have been originally written 3,500 years ago, but it refers to events that reputedly took place thousands of years before that. Among the verses of the Mahabharata, there are a number that contain vivid descriptions of what seemed to be a first-hand view of atomic warfare. When Western students of philosophy and religion in the 1880s were able to read and study the Mahabharata, a translation had been completed in 1884. That's very interesting. They naturally considered it as poetic fancy the frequent and curiously detailed references to ancient airships, Vimanas, Vimanas, with instructions of how they were powered and how to recognize enemy aircraft. There were even more puzzling references to a weapon to paralyze enemy armies called Mohanastra, Mohanastra, or, quote, the arrow of unconsciousness. That's brutal. As well as descriptions of, quote, two-story sky chariots with many windows ejecting red flame that race up to the sky until they look like comets, to the regions of both the sun and the stars. Holy moly. It must be remembered that the Mahabharata was translated decades before the appearance of aircraft, poison, or nerve gas. Yeah, the 1880s. Manned rockets and atomic bombs. Such references signified nothing other than wild flights of the imagination to readers of the Victorian era. Yeah, they just thought they were making stuff up with that, or representative objects supposed to mean something else. Other references were easily understood by Occidental students of the Mahabharata, inasmuch as they referred to relatively modern weaponry and concerned controlled firepower, different kinds of artillery and rockets, quote, bullets of iron, end quote, lead shot, explosives of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, rocket bombs capable of reducing city gates. Rocket bombs capable of reducing city gates. And the Agnyastras, spelled Agneystras, which are cylindrical cannons which made a noise like thunder. Even though these were attributed to ancient India, they failed to amaze the readers, some of whom suspected that they were intrusive or slipped in between the translation in an understandable Indian attempt to say, quote, we had them before you, end quote. Yeah. See, this is why we're in the dark with everything here, right? We've hit 2 hours. We have literally 4 pages left This was a lot longer than I was going to split this into 3 or 4 parts, and we're getting it into 2 now. Other mysterious weapons mentioned in the Mahabharata were better understood, although they had been fairly incomprehensible before during the development of World War I. An Indian military commentator, Ramchandra Dikshitar, the war in ancient India, pointed out that warfare had caught up with the Mahabharata, with modern airplanes being the equivalent of Vimanas, the Mohanastra weapon which caused armies to fall unconscious being the equivalent to poison gas. He also pointed out the use of the fog dart, which produced dense camouflage fog, and compared the Tastra, quote, capable of slaying large numbers of foes together, end quote, with improved modern explosives. While scholars of the last century and some British officers of World War I could recognize some of the rediscovered weapons of the Mahabharata, descriptions were so inconceivable that they confused the translators. Even the principal translator, P. Chandra Roy, observed in the introduction, quote, to the purely English reader, there is much in this book that will strike him as ridiculous, end quote. What was mysterious or ridiculous in the 1880s, and even during World War I, however, is no longer enigmatical to almost anyone alive today in today's uncertain world. The following excerpts dealing with an ancient war are chillingly familiar to us, although separated from our own atomic era by thousands of years. A description of a special weapon launched against an opposing army goes as follows. A single projectile charged with all the power of the universe. An incandescent column of smoke and flame, as bright as 10,000 suns, rose in all its splendor. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Andhakas, the enemies it was used against. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. Their hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without any apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. To escape from this fire, the soldiers threw themselves in streams to wash themselves and all their equipment. That mighty weapon bore away crowds of warriors with steeds and elephants and cars and weapons as if these were dry leaves of trees. Borne away with the wind, they looked highly beautiful, like flying birds, flying away from trees. So just imagine like elephants getting swept away by this blast, and they're just flying in there. Turned birds white and poisoned all the food. Instead of referring to the subsequent visual results after the explosion of such a superweapon as the mushroom cloud, the writer who saw, compiled from other accounts, or simply imagined the effect, described it as great clouds opening one over the other like a series of several gigantic parasols. A different notion than ours, but not at all a bad simile. Even the approximate measurements of the weapon or bomb are given. A shaft fatal as the rod of death. It measured 3 cubits and 6 feet, endowed with the force of 1,000-eyed Indra's thunder. It was destructive of all living creatures. An account is recorded of the meeting of 2 missiles in the air. The 2 weapons met each other in midair. Then earth with all her mountains and seas and trees began to tremble, and all living creatures were heated with the energy of the weapons and greatly affected. The skies blazed, and the 10 points of the horizon became filled with smoke. The Great War described in the Mahabharata is thought by many to refer to the, quote, Aryan, end quote, invasion of the Indian subcontinent from the north. A narrative that could have been described in understandable terms in proportion to the era, as was the Iliad, without recourse to such science fiction and strangely prophetic type weapons. It is pertinent to point out, however, that skeletons discovered in the extremely ancient cities of the Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, Pakistan, have been found to be extremely radioactive. Practically nothing is known of the histories of these very ancient cities except that they were suddenly destroyed. Ancient descriptions of airplanes and atomic warfare, of course, do not necessarily mean, however prescient they may prove, that the writer witnessed such marvels personally, or that they ever existed, except in his active and febrile imagination. In our own era, the Buck Rogers comic strip was freely dealing with the use of atomic bombs until the FBI, shortly before the super-secret real atomic bomb was tested in New Mexico, persuaded the author to desist from such references in his strip. Oh, really? Another unwitting prophetic coincidence of a science fiction nature was contained in Jules Verne's Voyage à la Lune, when he established Florida as the base, or as a base, for his fictional moonshot, upstaging the real moonshot by more than a century. By a further prophetic coincidence, the measurements given by Verne 100 years ago for Captain Nemo's imaginary submarine are almost identical with those of the present U.S. atomic subs. Even more mystifying was the case of Swift and the Moons of Mars. In writing Gulliver's Travels in 1726, Swift described the satellites of Mars and gave their approximate correct measurements and particulars of their revolution around the planet, despite the fact that the two moons he so casually and exactly referred to in a fictional work were not even discovered until 1877. And he wrote about this in 1726. It was found in 1877, and he wrote it as a fictional piece. Nevertheless, Verne, Swift, and the creator of Buck Rogers were living in a scientific age wherein the possibility of such discoveries or inventions was simply a matter of time. But the Indian records stem from perhaps more than 6,000 years ago. Certain Asians and Westerners as well who subscribe to the theory that civilized man has existed Certain Asians and Westerners as well who subscribe to the theory that civilized man has existed for a much longer time than previously suspected, and the pushing back of the time curtain of civilization does indeed seem to leave centuries and even millennia which may yet to be filled in, do not find unbelievable the possibility of crusting and vanishing waves of civilization throughout the world, some of which have left no trace except in legend. They therefore are prepared to believe the unexpectedly detailed Indian reference to atoms, atomic structure, atomic weapons, and advanced technology may be simply a preserved memory of prehistoric and scientifically advanced civilizations. In the legends of India, we should also consider the fact that certain sections of the Earth's surface seem to show atomic scars acquired millennia previous to atomic activities. These locations exist in, Siberia, Iraq, Colorado, and Mongolia, where Chinese atomic tests are leaving new scars comparable to the ancient ones, and in some places considerably below the present ground level. In the course of an exploratory digging in southern Iraq in 1947, layers of culture were successfully cored into by what one might call an archaeological mine shaft. Starting from the present ground level, the excavation passed the ancient city culture levels of Babylonia, Chaldea, and Sumeria, with flood levels between different ages of city culture, then the first village levels, then a level corresponding to that of primitive farmers at a time era of 6000 to 7000 BC, and below that, indications of a herdsman culture, and finally a time era was reached corresponding to the Magdalenian or cave culture about 16,000 years ago. Still farther down at the bottom of all levels, a floor of fused glass was revealed, similar to nothing else except the desert floor in New Mexico after the blasts which inaugurated our present atomic era. And with that is the end of Chapter 8. I can't believe I crammed that all into one show. 2 parts for Chapter 8. I was anticipating 4 parts. So for next week, we'll be doing Chapter 9, the Watchers, Protectors, Raiders, or Indifferent Observers. Whew, this was a long one for today from what we're used to on this Bermuda Triangle deep dive. But next week's show will be hopefully a little shorter than this one, because we did push further to get this one taken care of for today. And we looked at some images too. So, glad you all appreciate that. So next week, we will be doing Chapter 9. That'll be part 12 of this deep dive series. I really hope you all are enjoying this. And maybe I'll make a short list of the books that I'm considering moving forward with after this one's done. Because after next week, all that we have left to go over really is the acknowledgements, which I mean, we don't really have to do that. And then we have the bibliography pages from everything that he pulled from. So maybe just a brief reading of all the books that he used. I'm speaking of Charles Berlitz, what he used here to make this book. But man, oh man, we got a bunch more to look into here. That's why this is a deep dive. This is not for those with short attention spans, I'll tell you that much. But with hopefully with this series, if you don't have a large attention span, this will help. Like, because I think you could train your mind to work on these things for longer. There's always room for learning. So, at least that's how I approach a lot of this stuff. But that'll be it for today. I really appreciate you all being here. And yeah, Saturday is going to be the Chicago film industry deep dive. That's been a series we've been doing for the past several months. And then Sunday will be Let's Talk. So it'll just be a general update stream. And we might look at Ghost in the Shell, because I'm still working on getting my hands on that manga over there. But this is all for today for the Bermuda Triangle. I hope you all have a good rest of your week. Stay safe. And keep on learning. Until the next one, class dismissed.